Welcome everybody to our leadership webinar of the Lillian Lodge Copenhagen Center for the Advancement of Women in Communication. We are just completing our first year of operation, and we are delighted to have the last webinar of the semester. The mission of our center is to empower women, scholars, and professionals in the field of communication to develop visionaries in both the academy and the industry who will become leaders in society and make a difference in their communities. So one of the things that we do to help women become leaders in the communications industries are these webinars with leaders in the communications industries. So I am delighted to introduce our speaker for today. Joann Seiling is a professional search consultant and sales trainer with over 20 years experience. She has either personally hired or facilitated the hiring of over 2,500 professionals in her career. Her training and consulting subjects include hiring and exit interview techniques and strategies, manpower planning, career planning, employee retention, and contract negotiation. And today she's going to talk about using the strategic interview as a tool to build your career. So without further ado, I introduce Joann Seiling.
Thank you very much, and it's my pleasure to be here, and thank you to Dr. Copenhagen for allowing me this opportunity to speak with you. I am a former student of Dr. Copenhagen, and I do have a degree of Bachelor of Arts in Journalism from the University of Wisconsin. For both Dr. Copenhagen and I are masters. It's my expectation with this conversation today that you would hear because nobody wants just a job, but is planning for a career. And I do hope that to the best of our ability technologically that this will be an interactive session. So please feel free to ask questions at any time during the session. And I do have a colleague who will be here to help me as much as possible. I like to say technology is our friend, but today I think it's going to make a liar out of me if that's the case. As a trained journalist, you have been taught to interview as a basic skill that is refined by experience. Yet, in my experience, the experienced interviewer is frequently a poor interviewee, especially in an employment situation. Traditionally, an employment interviewer is, regardless of that situation, responsible for directing the flow and pace of the questions and answers. Answering a few questions themselves, specifically about the company and about the position for which you are inquiring. Because you yourself are not driving the interview, it does put you in a position where you may be uncomfortable and in unfamiliar territory. So that's talking about yourself, and a lot of journalists aren't real good at that. Hopefully you guys are all different. I would like to share with you that over 20 years I have found to be very proven techniques and strategies that I have used on successfully more effective interviews. We're going to discuss a number of topics during this: objectives of an interview, separating yourself from the pack, interview traps and how to manage them, volunteered information, please never lie, but spin is acceptable, defining the expectations of the employer, defining and refining your personal expectations and goals, the part I like to call show me the money, bad interview, follow-up, getting the offer, negotiations, and my very favorite part, never ever. Let's establish the basic vocabulary so that you understand exactly what I mean when I use certain terms interchangeably. HR, human resources, talent acquisition, and the interviewer to me are interchangeable terms. Is HR always involved in the process? Well, the simple answer to that is the larger and more diverse the organization, the larger and more diverse and specialized the human resources department. The HR specialist will generally be your primary point of contact, make offers, and unfortunately be the person who will let you down, because they are rarely the decision maker. But be nice to HR, because when they're impressed with you, they will advocate for you for other opportunities within the organization and give you an early lead, whether you know it or not, ahead of other people who are yet to apply. The hiring justice of sound. That's the decision maker, and very likely the person to whom you'll be reporting, either directly or indirectly. This is the person in operation delivering the product, ensuring that things come in on time, on schedule, on budget, to the quality that's expected. This doesn't make any difference what the industry. The hiring manager is the hiring manager. This is a person that you will need to charm with your education and your capabilities and develop a relationship with. The candidate or applicant is you. In my philosophy, you move from becoming an applicant to a candidate when you are a contender with an interview in hand. Congratulations. You know, you got an interview. At that point, it really is only yours to lose. The employer, company, or organization is the business entity for which you're seeking employment. Something just happened to the webcam, so I'm going to start that and keep going. And hopefully everything is fine. Presentations. Presentations are a term that I like to use in which you relate the facts and events that tell your specific story. Well, people call it a story, but I like to say it's a presentation because it's generally written in a very, very, very abbreviated fashion. In my experience, I think it's very effective in dealing with particularly difficult or emotional situations, actually, when they need or should be discussed. The golden rule is never, ever, ever lie, okay, because it will always come back to bite you in the butt. The other thing is that it's not a good idea to tell what I call fish tales. Fish tales are have a tendency to become larger and more grandiose as time goes on. Everybody following me so far? Am I going to get any feedback at all? Okay. What's the actual purpose of an employment interview? Well, a lot of people say to get information. Truth be told, the employment of someone saying I'm not intelligible. Can you hear me if I move closer to the microphone? Okay. Would you like me to start from the beginning? All right. What is the purpose? I'm sorry about this, but I've got my phone hooked in because it's low on battery, and I'm going to hold it right here. So it's not going to be pretty, but you should be able to hear me better. Is this better?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. The actual purpose of the employment interview is an offer. Basically, without the offer, you have nothing to show except a little experience. You can get a lot of experience, but the bottom line is you need an offer. Well, information gathering is extremely important. In this day and age, with the technology that's available to you online, you should be doing the bulk of your information gathering prior to walking into an interview, whether it's a phone interview or an in-person interview. The internet, LinkedIn, and a variety of other research tools will yield a wealth of information if you invest the time to look and understand how to interpret it. Don't waste valuable time in your interview asking questions that you should have already researched. The expectation today is that the research will be completed before you arrive. So what should you be researching? Well, the website. This is how the company wants itself represented. They have editorial control. They pay people to do it. They know exactly how they want to be seen and perceived in public. Utilize Glassdoor and LinkedIn. These and other websites will help you understand how the employees see the company. Why is this important? Well, if you're going to work there, you might want to know how the people feel who are actually already working there. How does the world perceive the company? You want to look into the news and the press releases and the mentions in the media, particularly the news and press releases sections on their website, and then compare them to the mentions in the media. Try the local business journal, industry resources. This will help you how they're branding themselves. How diversified or specialized is the company, the organization? Take time to look at a few years of annual reports, because you may not be able to read the financial statements in those annual reports, but you will definitely be able to read about the net goals, references to the corporate business plan. Why is this important? Well, you need to know who you're going longer have anything to discuss. A CV is an entirely different document, a different matter, and recognizes the different circumstances when they're appropriate. Neither document should replace a face-to-face meeting, but yes, there's ample opportunity for TMI. Now we're going to the interview. Okay, you've been contacted, you've scheduled a meeting. Well, what can you expect? They're going to either offer you or tell you that you're going to have a phone interview or a face-to-face. If you're lucky, you'll have both, but let's start with the phone interview. The phone interviews at this stage are becoming more and more norm for initial contact. Why? Well, that's because of time management. That's the biggest reason. Also, the ability to evaluate the interviewer without being swayed by a candidate's mannerism and appearance. People can be fidgety when they're in an interview. When you're in a telephone interview, you can be in your pajamas and nobody will know. But you do need to be careful because they can be impersonal. You do need to find a way to project yourself over the phone. The difference would be, let's see, we've lost the webcam again. The difference would be is that, it looks like it's on my end again. I apologize. The difference being is that you have an opportunity to inject your emotions, your facial features, lean forward, which is a sign of interest in body language, when you have a personal interview. You can still sell yourself. You just need to have prepared to think about how to answer the question. It is a lot easier to reject a candidate that you've never met face-to-face. And also, people used to line up candidates 5, 10, 15 deep in an office and then just go one at a time. And they'd have ample opportunity to chat with each other about, are you going in, what do you do, those types of things. In a telephone interview, anonymity between candidates is complete. When you are offered a telephone interview, it's not inappropriate to offer to Skype or web conference. Do not FaceTime. If you're FaceTime, you're using the exact same device to FaceTime as you are to talk, and it can be very distracting. It does show that you're comfortable with technology, not afraid of being seen, and you're simply asking for that face-to-face meeting. The interviewer can't become more personal by establishing that personal connection. The interview can't become more personal by establishing a personal connection. Speak to company milestones, major events in the area, but above all, be succinct and sincere. And the reason I say to speak to those milestones, that is a way to establish a connection with your interviewer, and you can be very brief. You know, it could be the weather, which is kind of basic, but the other thing is that it could be a traffic accident or something that's going on in town. Skype or web conferencing will usually be declined for very specific reasons, generally corporate policy. But should the hiring manager be unable to schedule face-to-face interviews, this is a very viable option, particularly if there's travel involved and you want the job, you're willing to relocate, but they don't want to pay to have you come in. I suggest that once you ask, and it's offered and declined, you take messages being received. The HR professionals, as I said before, are a gatekeeper and primary point of contact. They evaluate all candidates on several basic conditions: education, skills, and your suitability for that particular opening and for the company and other opportunities. As well as providing the candidates information in various areas, but very specifically in corporate policies and benefits. Don't overlook this part of the interview process, as the information is being very valuable in making a decision. We'll actually discuss that a little bit later, but they will at that point discuss it as being part of your compensation. There are always exceptions. HR will conduct a lot of interviews for every position in the organization, and while they are all broadly familiar with every position, more often than not they are not intimately familiar unless they specialize Should a distraction occur? This is very important when you're in these types of things. Should a distraction occur? Apologize once. You don't need to repeat it over and over again. Be professional. Address the distraction and then move on. Particularly if you're able to continue it, if you cannot, establish a time and date to reconvene. When you are in a face-to-face interview, please always dress appropriately. Conservative is better, even if you're told it's a casual day, or they're always casual. That's for success, not for your comfort. They need to see you once. Dress that way. Personal note, don't wear really new clothes or shoes. Take things for a trial run. You want to be smart and comfortable and know that they fit. One time I wore a pair of shoes to a meeting, brand new, marble floor. Slid, went down on my knee, had a giant bruise, limped the rest of the day. Not a good impression. Bring several hard copies of your resume, references, and samples. It is acceptable to have them in a soft file and email them while you're in the interview after asking permission to do so. I recommend you have an email in your draft at all times, but only needs an address, so that you can go ahead and just add that address and send it along. Arrive at least 10 minutes early. Know where you're going and how to get there, the time of your interview, who you're meeting. Make sure that you allow for traffic, parking, a long walk in a big complex. And in some places, that could be up to 30 minutes to get from the reception area where you might get a security badge to actually get to the office you're going to. Make sure that you need to include in your training, the reference that you check your parents, call yourself. Trial runs are actually a very smart idea. Know where you're going, what parking is like, and the size of the building. Be fully familiar with the position description of either interview. The absolute requirements and the flexible we want to have on the employer's wish list. How do you discern those? The same as when you're looking on a cereal box and the things that they have the most over at the front and the things that have the least over at the end. That's similarly what's going to be on a position description if it's well written. Sometimes these things are very stock. And if it's not clear, it's a good question to ask. Is what are the absolutes? And what are the things that we'd like to get this in the next person we hire? It's going to show that you're interested, that you're earnest, and that you've actually read the position description. It's also going to tell you that interviewer truly knows what they're looking for if they can distinguish it. If they say all of it, there's always a little bit of leeway in a few things there. A good interviewer will always ask you open-ended questions about yourself, your skills, your experience, and your education. This is an opportunity for you to briefly, succinctly brand yourself. Your resume and samples will not always speak for you, particularly if you're a new grad. You'll have some things to show them that will be examples, but you really don't necessarily have a lot of viable experience. You have to speak for yourself. You can't be shy. And again, the preparation, which we'll talk about again in a moment, is critical. Specifically, brief answers are key to open-ended questions. If you were asked to elaborate on a topic, well, it's usually a good sign unless you haven't addressed the topic itself. You do need to be likable without question. That if you are not an engaging person, an interview is not the time and place to try and learn and to project a likable personality. You must be able to project that you are a likable personality. Common ground and likability are very different things. If you have a common ground of some kind with your interviewer because you see something in their office that you have in common, it's a good thing to comment on it. So that's one thing. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're appealing to them. Take cues from your interviewer and let things happen organically. You'll have an opportunity to share relevant and necessary details at the end of your interview. Eager and passionate is good. Have too much eager, too much passion, and then derail you. You need to be flexible. You need to listen. This is a long subject. We're going to talk about behavioral interviewing. Okay, what is it and why is it used? Behavioral interviewing is an interviewing technique that's very popular now. And it's used by employers to learn about your past behavior in situations. Why? Well, past behaviors better predict your future behavior. That is speculation on your part. consider your future behaviors. Behavioral interview prompts will often ask you to describe or give an example. They are usually not questions, but are statements for your response. Okay? So one might be, describe a time when you were faced with a problem or stresses at work that tested your coping skills. What did you do? Generally speaking, these types of questions are going to start with describe, give, tell me about. Okay? Responding to these types of questions, never be vague, never be general. Be as specific as you can, but again, remember brevity. I have a list of questions, which are examples, which I'm going to email so that they can pass out as examples of questions that you might be asked of this type. Behavioral interviewing is not exclusively the domain of human resources. If you're dealing with people a lot, you can be expected to be asked to respond to this question at any stage of your interview. So now we're going to talk about more preparation. Okay, prior to your interview, review the skills, abilities, and characteristics required for the job. Search your memory for occasions when you demonstrated these skills, abilities, and characteristics. Make notes so that you can prepare yourself to discuss in a factual, specific way in the interview your response. I'm a big believer in using a 3x5 card, old-fashioned 3x5 card. They allow you to develop, practice, and refine, and be consistent when you're making these presentations, these answers that you will be making in your interviews. Okay? Don't expect, like I'm doing right now, to read directly from your notes in an interview. Use these notes to prepare yourself and to practice. I found that over the years that if there's a particularly difficult situation that may have come up, or an emotional situation, they're usually hand in hand, that if you take the time to put down the facts and you can discuss it without any emotion, actually, it'll be accepted, it'll be moved on, and it's covered, things are fine. Potential sample interview questions or preparation, okay? Again, most interviewers are going to ask you and everybody else they talk to the same 5-10 questions. And again, the most informative questions are not yes-no questions. And you can trap yourself with yes-no questions, so be careful about that. The questions that you will be asked, particularly as new grads, is what are your long-range goals and objectives for the next 7 to 10 years? Have you already thought that far out? They're only looking for the things that you're looking to do professionally. They really don't want to know if you can volunteer it and it's dangerous territory. Are you going to get married and have children? What are your short-term goals and objectives for the next 1 to 3 years? Okay, if you're going to graduate school, that's a reasonable thing to tell them. And it opens up a line of conversation. Do you have a plan to achieve your goals? Now, I just ask that as a yes or no question. Okay? Because if you answer yes, they're going to ask you to elaborate. What rewards do you expect in your career? This is a potential trip-up question. If you relate it only to the financial, you're kind of shallow. Okay? They're going to look for an individual who is looking for professional advancement. They're looking for somebody who wants to get better. They usually get a lot of drones, but generally speaking, they're looking for the exceptional person. How did you choose the career for which you're preparing, for which you're interviewing? They'd like to understand your thought process. Again, be clear and be brief. What are your strengths, weaknesses, and interests? That one can be a giant Pandora's box. How do you think a friend or professor who knows you well would describe you? That's a very important one. It's a good idea to ask people. If you're called and you're asked to speak about me, okay, can you share with me what you're going to say? Some people will tell you, well, they prefer not to. That's a good indicator that they think that you have some ask you about contributions that you've made, occasions when you've had a disagreement and how you handled it, or did you kept stew on it? Were you able to express yourself well? They'll potentially ask you about your most rewarding experience. Very probably they're going to ask you how you feel about their company, their product, or their product line, or the various business line that you're going to be going into. Don't be surprised if you're asked what subjects did you like best, did you excel in, what did you like least, and why. So again, there's an entire laundry list of questions that they could ask you. And they might ask you, are you willing to spend at least 6 months as a trainee? What I haven't covered here, which I will cover later, is the areas where you can volunteer information and where they cannot ask you, where they cannot go. And that is a tricky area, and if you're not familiar with it, it's something we do need to cover. That's four. What are they looking for? Defining the expectations, of the HR person, of the hiring manager, of the corporation. They may come straight out and tell you if you're very fortunate. And if you're very fortunate, they'll be extremely clear. But this is where you really need to observe and analyze what the cues include and analyze the things during the course of the interview that you have with anybody. But there is one question, which is the biggest trap that you can have. And tell me about yourself. And that might seem like it's open season to just share abundantly. And it's very innocuous and very, very dangerous. The interviewer is interested in information about you that really relates to your qualifications. You need to be likable without question. And preparation, again, is 3x5 coverage, knowing that at some point in time you're going to be asked to tell people about yourself. It's critical. This is where you're going to process and strategically control the flow of information. Not mindlessly or just off the cuff. Off the cuff, no matter how good you are, unless you're a world-class debater, is dangerous territory for most people. And again, those off-limit things on your merit status, your age, your domestic status, meaning non-platonic roommates. Do you have children? Do you own a rent? Religion? Your financial status? Political affiliation? Disability? Medical history? Planned child marriage or domestic partnership? Family, daycare situation, working or supervising the opposite sex. Those are all of the off-limit questions. If you consider it relevant, and you choose to do so, you may share any of this information. But once you do, again, it becomes open season for questioning. There's reasons why they can't answer these questions, and they cannot make their evaluations on this subject matter. If for some reason you find a response for rejection made on this subject matter, not a good thing. Okay, it's prejudicial. But if you use my 3x5 card method and you plan to answer the question, give people the facts, avoid editorializing opinions, it's a very good and effective method, for dealing with that question and any question and placing you in the light that you prefer to sell. Do not lie, do not fabricate, do not tell fish stories. Fish stories have a tendency to get larger, okay, when people tell them. And we've reached a good point to start to answer a few questions about what I've covered so far. So does anybody have any questions that they would like to pose to me? What I am going to do is I am going to, or do you want to type them or do you want to talk to me through the phone?
Well, I can speak to you. I've received a few questions in writing here from the audience. So the first is, what would be your advice for a junior professional who's looking for their next job in the industry, and when they're asked things like why are they looking for a different job or why are they looking for another opportunity, what would someone like that emphasize when you're trying to move up to a different, if you're a junior professional looking for your next step up?
Well, you phrased it appropriately to indicate that I'm looking for the next stage in my career. If you've maxed out what you can do where you are and you're just doing more of the same thing, eliminates you. The other thing is that most employers will think that you're going to move for money again as soon as you get more money. So it's quite important that you have some semblance of a plan. And there are some people who are just very lucky in life. Things fall into their place. But if you are actively going out and looking, and as a recruiter, I should explain that much of what I would do would be to have a client company come to me and say, we need somebody that can do A, B, C, D, and E. And I would find people and present them to them that could do the critical things. And then if we had somebody who fulfilled some of the items on the wish list, then that would be highly desirable. Those people are recruited, and they immediately get into a different category. But if you are responding to a posting or sending something in without there being a posted opening, doesn't mean there's not an opening, but without a posted opening, then you are in that situation where you must really justify why you are out there looking. Even if you are recruited, they will want to know, why are you interested?
So
I don't ask you, why are you looking, because they'll understand that you've been approached.
I have a follow-up question, which is, what other things do people look for in jobs besides financial? What suggestions do you have when they're asked, what are you looking for in your next stage besides a higher salary?
The number one reason in the world why people leave their jobs is they don't like who they work for or who they work with. So if you end up finding that you are not compatible with the people in your workplace, or you're always in conflict with your boss, and there is a way to answer that question. Because one of the things I will tell people further on is never speak negatively about about people. And again, that's where spin comes in. You can talk about not getting along with people, but you don't need to be quite so blunt. You're a trained wordsmith. You need to use that skill to make that statement without being quite so negative. But the number one reason people leave is because they don't like who they work with, particularly their boss. The commute is not a good reason to use when you're changing jobs. So it might be a viable reason. It's not a good one. When people are looking to hire people, what they are looking for is someone who has not just the skills, but they're looking to make an improvement in themselves. If you just want a lateral move, then explain that I'm happy with what I do. I'm just not particularly enamored with where I'm doing it at the moment. And please realize also that companies will use information like this as a recruiting tool when they find someone who's naysaying about their company. And that's why using some of the resources that I commented in, like about LinkedIn and Glassdoor, where you can find out what other employees feel about their employer. And I apologize, I said get rid of your distractions. My cat decided to jump up. Any other questions on this stage?
So, yes, there's a question from one of the online participants, and it's related to LinkedIn and the other social media. How important is it to maintain a professional appearance in social media? So not only LinkedIn, but obviously, with our students, they're young, their Facebook pages and other social media are often used for social interactions. How do employers look at that, and is it right for employers to look at that?
Number one, yes, employers do look at that because they're trying to find out how you communicate with people, and they're going to try and get a good indicator of a maturity level. And particularly the younger you are, that potentially is going to have an issue. Absolutely, you need to have a presence on LinkedIn, and you need to have a presence on Facebook and the others. I don't know that I'd say do everything, but be very careful as to what you put up there. Now, if somebody looks at mine, I talk about sports and the weather, and part of it is that a recruiter should always be a facilitator, not a participant in a transaction. You really don't want your personality in there. And often as a reporter, if we're talking straight news, you need to be objective, and people will be looking if you have biases, and those you have to be cognizant
Right.
People hear this all the time. LinkedIn is very professional. I wouldn't necessarily put things on it that you might put on Facebook, but be extremely careful who is able to view all of your Facebook, particularly if you're going with friends. When you see somebody who's got a picture, on a beach in Mexico during spring break, and is seriously inebriated, that's really not the way you want your profile picture to be. But an attractive, casual picture is highly desirable for both of those media.
Okay. So we have another question from one of the audience members. And the question is, how would you advise millennial graduates who are digital natives and very, very expert in all things social media and technology when they're operating in newsrooms or in other work environments that are not on the digital route? How can young people in the workplace educate others about the importance of digital, especially in communications?
You can educate people. You can show people who don't know how to do it how to do it. One of the things, and again, I prefer not to speak about myself personally, but one of the things that I had encountered was an employer who didn't want to spend money on technology. His philosophy was that email was too impersonal, but it was, of course, I've been doing recruiting for a long time. So much of what we had done was on the phone. So what I had done was he didn't have a corporate email account, so I created a personal email account, and I was emailing back and forth with my clients because it was a much more effective way to utilize their time and to lower my frustration level because I couldn't get them on the phone. And then eventually he said, okay, fine. So he did the website, he got the email, we had an email address. I didn't like the quality of his hardware. So what I did was I went out and I bought my own laptop because I was moving at a faster pace. So I educated him. And granted, I spent my own money. I was fortunate enough to be very successful and able to do that. But I educated the owner of the company on how technology would be our friend. I think the thing that those people who've been very reticent about embracing technology just need not so much a nudge, but they need a follow me, let me show you how to do this, and not somebody who has lightning fingers on a keyboard, but someone who's patient and will show them, take a particular situation, and show them how it would better them to do it. There are always those people who will never want to do it, and they don't want to take the extra time to be able to take a course in it. But if you show them, their curiosity will be piqued. If they're successful, then you can show them a little bit more. So I don't want to say it's dragging them into the new technology, but a certain amount of it is. If you've got a newsroom that isn't up to date, that might actually be the very best reason that you can express as to what your motivation for moving is. I'm very technologically oriented. I don't want to be left behind. They're not making any effort to improve the situation. I will never be able to meet my goals, and you have to define your goals in order to be able to stay current and stay on the cutting edge.
So a related question from someone online is, how honest should you be in your interview, especially regarding, not regarding fishtails, but regarding to your proficiency with particular skills? Because for a job, they might be looking for someone who is proficient in X, Y, and Z software, for example, and you may not be expert. How is it normal and okay to exaggerate a little bit about your skills, not lies?
Okay. I would never exaggerate about my skills, but by the second statement, I would not understate them well. And you may compare yourself to somebody next to you who is just a whiz bang, and you plod. But it doesn't mean that you don't have the skill set. It just means that you aren't as quick as they are. So proficiency and speed are two entirely different things. about this. Well, what's wrong with the environment you're in now? If the company does not bring in new technology, does not educate you on new technology, now there's another thing. If you don't avail yourself to use it and become educated in it, shame on you. Mm-hmm. Okay.
It almost sounds like an index card, an index card item. Like, get ready to how you're going to explain what you're not that proficient in, perhaps.
It very much is. Again, one of the things that I personally like to see, and it's just people put on a resume, is, and I call it technology, so that you indicate what they're not so much interested in what computers you're interested in, but in what software that you're proficient in. So do I know everything about Word? Not a chance. Okay, but am I capable in it to put it on a resume? Absolutely. Okay. Do I know everything about Excel? No. But can I put it on my resume because I use it? Yes. Again, it opens up, and again, the resume, as I said, it wants to tell people about you, but it doesn't want to take the place of the interview. You do want to have that conversation. So this is one of those areas that it is subjective, because one person may evaluate you as being much better than you evaluate yourself, or much worse. So you need to understand what the bar is for the evaluation. And you may not understand that until you get in, but that's why you don't want to, unless you are truly an expert, you do not want to state your level of capability as far as technology goes on your resume. That should be a conversation piece in an interview.
That's good advice. So we only have time for about a couple more questions. We have one from someone here in the audience.
Yes, if I have a phone interview, how should I end the conversation?
How can one end the conversation in a phone interview?
That's the first interview.
That is the first interview.
That's a very, very, very good question. What will usually happen, okay, is the interviewer will have allocated a fairly specific amount of time, because they're going to have a number of these generally set up back to back, and they're going to have to be late. If I was, I got to tell you, I only got to page 10 out of page 17 of what I was talking about. One of the things that you will do as an interviewer will ask you if you have any questions, and that's a signal that the interview is starting to wind down. And you do need to be prepared with questions if they have not already answered them for you. And so generally speaking, as a candidate, you will never have to wind down an interview. If you have found, and this is again kind of dangerous territory, if you have found during the course of this conversation with the interviewer that there's no way that you're interested, qualified is a whole other matter, but interested in what they're talking about, you can politely in that interview and just say, I think that what we are on is not the thing for me, and I don't care to waste your time anymore, and make it all about them. Not about you, but make it all about them. And that way you can gracefully allow yourself out of it. So it is permissible to do that. So I don't think you're ever going to have to end up an interview. Ever. Based on my experience.
Does that answer
unless
your
it's
question?
somebody who's very inexperienced and it's going to take a very long time. Before we wind up, I want to finish up with a couple things. Every interview should always be followed up. Okay, you do need to follow up, preferably with a written note. Typed is best because it's both legible and it's both clear, and do it in not less than 2 business days. Handwritten is nice. It's very personal. Email is okay. At least you've gotten a response on it. And the thing that's important is that you're able to reinforce what you can bring to the company. Anything you've forgotten to mention, you're going to be able to mention it then. And if you need to provide follow-up with any information, do that. And if you have just 1 minute, I'd like to go through the always and the never-evers, because they are important. Always dress appropriately. We said bring several hard copies. Arrive early. Shake the hand of the persons that you are meeting with. I know in South Florida, hugs are very common, but not a business situation. Okay, after you work for them, I have clients who insist on a hug. But we have a long-standing relationship. Ask for a business card if you're not offered one. Ask for one, and you must have the correct spelling of the names being interested. Never, ever, ever make negative comments about former employers, professors, and co-workers. Use your language skills to be polite, but sometimes you have to answer the question, but don't be outright, somebody's a schmuck. Okay, it's not good. Do not give the appearance that the only appeal is for money. Okay, never, ever, ever bring your own food and drink into an interview. If you're offered, it's fine. Don't come with a water bottle. Never bring your spouse, your significant other, your parents, your children, your pets to an interview. Okay, it's not appropriate. If there's somebody with you, they need to be prepared to wait themselves, not on site, at an entirely another place. Okay, and last thing, never, ever, ever, ever swear. You know what happens to the young broadcaster first day on the job up in North Dakota? It applies to interviews too. And last but not least, never answer your cell phone when you're in an interview. Turn it off. Don't put it on you. Turn it off. Don't use the buzzers and the beeps, things like that. It's distracting. But thank you very much for allowing me to contribute. I will be emailing some list of some questions for everybody to look at. And if anyone has anything they'd like to follow up in writing, if you email me at Joann Seiling, all one word, at yahoo.com, I will be more than happy to respond to you. And again,
thank you very
much for the technical difficulties.
Thank you very much for participating, and you've provided a lot of really interesting information, and we would very much like to post your questions that you're going to send together with the video of this presentation. So we appreciate your time, and thank you for those that joined us online.